everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, founder and president of Career Club, and thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Career Club Live. Today's episode is sponsored by Next Placement, which is our innovation in the outplacement space, where we're bringing a more people-centric, empathetic approach to helping folks who are being off-boarded or when you're transitioning employees. Again, check us out at career.club, Next Placement. Very excited about today's guest. He came highly recommended by a mutual friend of ours, who we'll name in a minute. But today's guest is Sean Ruglis. Sean is the founder and president of the Catalyst Group. And just to read a little bit more about that, a strategic consulting and brand development firm that develops platforms and designs engagements that enable brands and organizations to connect with their audiences. Through uncovering the client's proposition at its core, they harness insights, industry knowledge, and strategy to design outcomes and experiences that resonate. So with all of that, Sean, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And thanks for having a well-written website. That was good. But first, I just really happy to have you. I mentioned that we've got a mutual friend, Bill Donabedian, who used to run the Brandemonium conferences here in Cincinnati. We're both in Cincinnati. And you came highly, highly recommended. We've gotten to know each other since, and I'm really glad that we've got the opportunity to have you today. So thank you.
Thank you. I think the connection between Bill and us is wonderful because Bill is the type of person that created Brandemonium as a platform for brand activations and experiential marketing. And he was kind enough to actually allow me to introduce a multicultural track within that conference, which led to a series of things I've done with our clients and agencies around the world, as well as having this conversation today. So glad to be connected with you, Bob.
Yeah, and thank you for kind of telegraphing the topic here, which is going to be around multicultural marketing. And we're going to unpack that. I think that whether you are a marketer or an HR professional, this all kind of ties together. So again, I don't want to jump the gun, but thank you for mentioning the multicultural piece because it's going to be really, really interesting. Before we do all that, though, as is our wont, we have just a couple of icebreaker questions to help people get to know you a little bit better. So easy one. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Rochester, New York. Used to be the headquarters of Bausch & Kodak and Xerox. So not a native Cincinnatian. I failed the high school question, which is so important here.
I'm not going to ask you the high school question. Although I did phrase it that way, like, where'd you go to school? So that can be high school or college, but I'll let you answer that as you wish.
Yeah. So I'm a native of Rochester, New York, born and raised in Western New York. My undergrad, I went to University of Buffalo, and then came back and did my MBA at the Simon Business School, University of Rochester, which was a recruiting school for Procter Gamble. And so that is actually how I got to Cincinnati. Was I was recruited by in Fabric and Home Care, the largest business unit in P&G, and started as an assistant brand manager on Downey. Got promoted to assistant brand manager on Bounce, and then got promoted to a brand manager role doing shopper marketing. So anywhere from conceptualizing products to getting them to the to shelf to consumer purchase is kind of how I what I've done. And so that's how I got to Cincinnati, and which is now the branding capital of the world.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's how it all happened.
Well, so you anticipated my next question. You've already started to answer it, which is just a little bit about your career. So, started at Procter and you had some nice promotions there. And then where did all that lead?
Yeah, so P&G is how I got into Cincinnati. And I think, I came from a top 20 MBA program. And, there's aspects of things that you love about business and aspects that come out that end up being your passion points. And marketing was mine. So I was fortunate enough to get my branding teeth cut at the world's largest advertiser. From P&G, I left and jumped on the other side of the table and became a brand strategist for a global design firm here locally still, working on every other brand except P&G. So I've got a lot of experience in terms of understanding then what the creative process kind of looks like and how strategy is created and how it manifests itself into design. Left to go to work with one of my clients, which was at that time, Cincinnati was developing a brand to attract visitors, which was tourism. Yep. And so I worked with a P&G executive on loan who recruited me to the tourism group. And I consequently became the president of tourism for Cincinnati. And that cut my teeth on experiential marketing, right? Mm-hmm. So brand activations, thinking about a way to reasons to have people come to your region and spend money. And then I left there and became the president and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce for Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati. And so that's where I really got steeped into economic development, small business development, in corporate relationships. And then I got the itch from some of my members and started my own brand strategy and consultancy, the Catalyst Group. So a lot of good corporate experience, corporate and municipal partnerships, and then now, small to mid-tier business experience is kind of how I round up my.
No, it's great. We talk about at Career Club because we help our clients do their personal branding, and you've got a very eclectic set of experiences. But we talk about baking a cake, where you've got flour, eggs, milk. What's sugar? What should I be? And it's like, well, no, blend them together, create something really unique, and synthesize those things. And you've done just a phenomenal job with that. Last personal question. What do we find you doing, Sean, when you're not at work and helping brands activate?
Man, I wish there was a time where I wasn't working. But I enjoy music, particularly live music. I am a huge hip hop head. So the 50th year of hip hop has brought a lot of entertainment options for me. But I also I'm a bourbon enthusiast. So
you're in the right part of the country.
Yeah, exactly. So wherever I can find a good sip in a decent environment, you'll find me doing that as often as I can.
That's cool. Awesome. Well, let's jump into our topic because obviously, and I think listeners and viewers can see already that you really do have a very well-rounded background and kind of come at multicultural marketing from a number of angles. Just kind of broadly, can you help people understand what you mean by multicultural marketing, kind of what it is and maybe what it's not?
Yeah. I think it's, we'll start with what it's not because it probably surprises group. Multicultural marketing is not a utopic effort, right? It's not a company's diversity effort. It is really a business strategy. So when we think about multicultural marketing, and I'm just going to back it up for folks who are kind of in our industry in terms of marketing and advertising and folks who are not. Every brand in the world, every company in the world is looking for growth, right? And this easy way to think about this is that the only way that a company or a brand can grow is to appeal to a broader swath of consumers, right? Or people who would buy their services. And so when we start to think about then the demographic changes and shifts that are happening in the US is getting much more diverse, right? And so if a brand's growth is tied to how many people that it can attract and engage and ultimately buy its services, then in some way, shape, or form, it's in the brand's best interest to understand the insights, the motivations, and the attitudes of everybody it wants to sell to. Mm-hmm. So multicultural marketing is not just, hey, how do Black and brown people think, and should we just position our brands to appeal to them? No. All of our business growth comes from appealing to as many consumers as possible. And the ways that brands resonate is to be able to understand each of these consumer segments separately, such that there's a collective universal theme that they can find to identify a way in a territory that they can own and connect with consumers. And that's how it happens. So multicultural marketing is not a DE&I initiative. Multicultural marketing is not just the right thing to do. But multicultural marketing is the key driver to brand growth for all companies.
Yeah. So when we first were getting to know each other, I shared with you that, you talked about shopper marketing. And before starting Career Club in 2021, I was at Numerator and IRI and NPD, and Numerator's panel data. And so I was teaching Wall Streeters, hey, there's only two ways to really grow a brand at the end of the day. You either sell to more people or you sell more stuff to the same people. Those are sort of like your options. And what you're talking about is sort of that first piece of it, at least, which is, well, how do we increase household penetration? If we're selling to this group of people and there's this many people out there, how do we broaden our reach and our appeal to include more households in the brand franchise? Is that fair?
That's fair. And I think the key piece here that ends that, is what gets measured gets done. So let's talk a little bit about the measurements. If you look at any category, name it, food, cell phones, entertainment, cars, the research will say for most consulting firms that 20 to 30% of new growth comes from ethnic consumers. So that's when you think about growth, incremental growth, almost a third of that growth is coming from ethnic consumers. Mm-hmm. The buying power for ethnic consumers is now amassing close to 1.5 trillion, is expected to be more than $2 trillion in buying power over the next 3 or 4 years, right? And so what we're talking about then is that the pie is getting bigger. And even companies like P&G have acknowledged, they were at Black Tech Week in Cincinnati just 3 or 4 weeks ago. And what they said is they identified that 60% of the new growth that they're experiencing in their brand is coming from consumers of color. And so the key piece simply is that when we think about multicultural marketing, we're not saying, hey, let's just do some feel-good campaigns and that resonate with consumers. What we're talking about is that it's going to be essential that we position brands and experiences to resonate with the consumers that have the money to be able to purchase our products, and that's what's going to fuel our growth. The last thing I'll just share with you is P&G and some other companies did what is called a fair share assessment, right? And what that basically says is, if we can look at multicultural consumers, let's call it Black and Hispanic consumers, just to use two segments. And if we can get the household penetration and share levels of those ethnic consumers to equal what we have in our general market of white consumers, that actually leads to between $100 million and $500 million of new growth without inventing a new product, right? So the key piece just simply is saying is that if you want to unlock brand potential, if you want to unlock company growth, then it's not necessarily a great thing to do, and just a great thing to do in terms of embracing D&I and diversity, but it becomes a business imperative because the face of our consumer looks different today than it did 15, 20 years ago.
So I just want to underscore, bold, put an exclamation point behind what you were saying, because it's just good business. Do the math. If you have a growth imperative, everybody does, grow or die. If you've got a growth imperative, and we know that most new products fail, right? The failure rate on new product launches is in the 90s. It's not encouraging. And yet so much money gets put against innovation, not saying that you shouldn't try and innovate, but at the same time, you make a very compelling case of if we just got our fair share against these under-indexed segments of shoppers who have, what did you say, 1.5 trillion, going to be $2 trillion in a few years? Mm-hmm. I mean, you don't need a whole lot of 2 trillion to probably hit your growth target, even if you're Procter.
Yeah. And so what we talk about in terms of the business imperative of reaching as many consumers as possible is that we've had interactions with, very large companies, P&G as an example. We've had interactions with Beam Suntory, which is the third largest spirits company in the world. They make, Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, obviously, Kvasse, and a couple of other spirits that we're all tasting. We work with, we went on the agency side, we've done interactions with the Publicis Group, which is the third largest agency group in the world. And now we're doing work with Kellogg's North America with 6 brands and 5 agencies. And what we're really doing, we introduced a platform and a tool called the Cultural Competency Monitor that helps brands understand whether or not they're investing behind their growth opportunity. So it's one thing to say, hey, we see this as an opportunity for business growth. It's another to say, hey, what is our footing, right? What affords us to lean forward to engage these consumers, and then where do we need to enhance our processes, our approaches to get there, right? And so what we'll be talking about today, and some of the are going to be some of the findings that we've gotten working across all those great brands and all those great companies that hopefully will begin to help your listeners and your viewers begin to develop business strategies to connect with these consumers.
Yeah. So last thing, and then we'll double click on what you just said. Again, this isn't about, well, we ought to, we should, I feel better because I am, or whatever. Right. It's just do the math. And so what I love about what you guys have is a framework for establishing where are you now?
Yes.
And then what are the levers that you can pull that are most apt to get you to where you want to be to grow your brand, which is sort of your job.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So Let's kind of peel the onion back then a layer. And you said, kind of establishing your footing and then understanding where you can go to drive growth. Can you break that down just a little bit more of what that looks like?
Yeah. So when we talk about establishing our footing, some people look at multicultural marketing in a lot of different ways. Now, here's the way to think about this. 1 out of 2 consumers in the U.S. will identify as ethnically diverse, right? But 9 out of 10.
I'm sorry, 1 out of 2?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, 1 out of 2 consumers will identify as ethnically diverse. And let me double click on that since you brought that up. 10 years ago, there's a term called the census term called majority minority cities, right? Or majority minority. And that simply means that if you pick a geography, a city, a county, a state, or what have you, majority minority means that the ethnic population of that municipality or geography reaches 51% ethnic minority. Okay. Right. So that's why they call it majority minority.
Just to be even in plainer English, non-Caucasian majority?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Right. So what we're saying here is that 10 to 15 years ago, if you look at the top 40 metros in the US, maybe it was maybe 10 to 15 of the top metropolitan markets across the US were majority minority. Fast forward to now, 25 of the top 40 metropolitan markets in the US have an ethnic population that tops more than 51%.
So more than 50% of the top 40 markets in the US are already ethnically diverse as measured by the census.
Absolutely. Right. And so when we start to think about this, those are consumers, those are customers. Right. And so 1 out of 2 people in the US ultimately identify as an ethnic minority. But when we look at marketing and branding agencies and marketing and media industries, 9 out of 10 people who are creating messages for them are not. So when we start to talk about multicultural marketing and trying to engage consumers, many brands and many companies are trying to get growth out of a consumer group they never had a conversation with. Mm-hmm. They don't understand the insights, the attitudes associated with authentically connecting with diverse consumers. And so therefore, some of their brand propositions don't necessarily connect. And sometimes they marginalize communities of color or LGBTQ or what other diverse segments because they're not there. And so one of the things that brands have done is to begin to start thinking about what is our footing, right? Before we start to engage in this journey, hey, do we have a way that we can understand our level of readiness to actively engage in, and engage these consumers with our marketing and branding and our agency platforms? And so that is where I see that, the smartest brands and most effective brands have done that, right? They have dissected our approach. That we do is we dissect a brand's development process and we dissect an agency's creative development process. And we help you understand your level of readiness. And then we also help you understand then where some focused enhancements can come from to improve your outcome to resonate with these diverse consumers. And so I think that's really the first step is to not just jump in and say, okay, well, we got the data, we made the market case study, the business case study, let's just go. No, I think the first step is to calculate, hey, what is our footing today? And what is our level of readiness to engage in that? And then begin to start to understand where we need to enhance some things, come out with some strategies, and then execute.
So I'm sorry, I might be a little slow. What are some of the hallmarks of readiness?
So some of the hallmarks of readiness in our platform for the cultural competency monitor, we look at 5 things on the brand side and 3 things on the agency side. And we assess both. For a brand, we're looking at whether or not you prioritize this consumer segment, right? I should be looking at your brand goals. Have you done analysis on the household penetration, things that you and I just talked about? Are there gaps? But I should also see in looking at your budgets, are you investing behind your growth opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. I'm also looking at the level of diversity within the brand, right? Because if your brand, again, we talked about that statistic of 9 out of 10 people creating consumer branding and marketing campaigns that are ethnically diverse. If you happen to have diversity within your organization, that gives that creates a better opportunity for you and to embed the insight you need to be effective. So the first piece is, are you prioritizing the consumer? I should be able to look at your structure and your processes to do that. The second area we look at is alignment. That's your consumer research plan. Do you have any visibility into the attitudes, the behaviors, and the values of the consumers that we want to have a conversation with? The third area we look at is strategy. We say, okay, well, look, if I look at your brand and what it stands for and your footing and your equity and your promise and your benefits, how do those align with the needs of the multicultural consumer, right? The third piece is the fourth piece is just looking at your brand expression, and that's just like your commercials. Do they have representation? Right. And even if they do have ethnic minorities in them, are they in context, right? Are they in are you finding an in-culture moment that they can see themselves in your brand and feel as if there's a connection? So that's what we do on the brand side. On the agency side, it's much simpler. 3 stops. We want to understand whether or not the agency has what is called core competency. Do they have the ability and the research and the strategy to be able to lead the brand's thinking in this area? The second area that we stop in is whether or not they have the cultural context. So think about it. Advertising agencies, media companies, even your everyday news companies, they take insights and their job is to manifest all what they've learned about these consumers into creative, like things you read, things you consume. And so we're looking at their ability to even do that. And the third piece is the quality of the executions. Are they able to produce brand touch points, commercials, media stories, public relations, shopper marketing activities that authentically engage these consumers? And so, again, what gets measured gets done. But my one of my mentors always said, his name was Sam Lynch, he said, you're perfectly designed for the outcome you get. So if you want to change your outcome, you have to look at how you're designed. And so that's what we do. We work with brands and agencies to understand if they're designed to do this well. And if they're not, then we are in a place then to help them identify where enhancements need to be made.
Say that little pearl of wisdom again.
That pearl of wisdom was you're perfectly designed for the outcome you get. And so if you want to change your outcome, you have to change your design.
There you go. I love that. Just as you're talking, Sean, and it seems like, particularly given the demographics that you paint a very compelling picture on, that how, by definition, multicultural marketing is mainstream marketing. It seems like it's still positioned as being niche or kind of a specialty thing. But if the demographics are what you're saying they are, this is marketing.
It is. And I think the term that we use is there's a term in branding and agency. They use the general market and they use, kind of multicultural special markets. General market generally means that you market to the middle, which traditionally is going to be white America, right? Because that's the way the brand campaigns have always used as a target, kind of the middle America, Ohio, whoever it is. And so they represent, the rest of the world as it relates to, consumer beliefs and all these other pieces, right? But that approach just completely ignores the demographic shifts and attitudes that we're seeing and changes in attitudes, right? Yeah. And so now what is happening as a practice is what is called total market, recognizing that the entire market is really the culmination of different segments within the market, each having a different nuance, right? And different way that they look at life and the way they enjoy life and the way that they move through life. And the brands that are most successful are the ones who are able to then understand how each segment is a little different, right? Identify a way to work across all segments such that it feels much more inclusive, dynamic, and resonates with more people. And so if you have a general market approach that just markets to the middle, then you're going to be leaving out a great swath of people that we said that had the buying power, right? Yeah. But if you have a total market approach, which is I'm going to spend my time in understanding the nuances associated with what it means to be an African American, what it means to be U.S. Hispanic, what it means to be Asian American, what it means to be a white male, what it means to be a white female, right? And if my brand can find some great space, right, in each of those segments, the potential for growth is exponentially better than marketing just to the middle. So you bring up a really good point, Bob. It's where there needs to be a shift from just general marketing and marketing to the middle. In a place that we're all familiar and comfortable with, into recognizing that our buying power, our business opportunity, and everything else lies in the culmination of different segments. And so now what we have to do is identify propositions that work across a lot of different groups.
Yeah, well, which is sort of where my mind goes, which is how do you have enough cohesiveness around the general, brand proposition, brand image, brand equities, and yet be able to operate across many potential subsegments of the market. We have seen, in the not too distant past, brands that have very broad demographic footprints really step in it because they triple down on one segment and ended up, offending and or running off their core consumer. So that seems to be a really challenging balancing act that the brand's got to engage in. How would you advise a client on that?
Yeah, so I think the piece is understanding the nuances. The magic is in understanding nuances. So let me give you a quick example, since we both have, consumer packaged goods experience, right? So let's talk about toothpaste, right? So all the work's been done in the world and research that, hey, the toothpaste offers 3 benefits that everybody wants, right? White teeth, fresh breath, right? And cavity prevention, right? I'm just using those 3 as 2 broad statements, right? If we were to say white teeth means something different across different consumer segments, and fresh breath. White teeth to some consumer segments might say this signifies health. But for other consumer segments, it might say this reinforces a positive image. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
So while we have a brand benefit that says white teeth, fresh breath, and lack of cavities, those benefits mean something different depending upon who you're talking to.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the key piece for brands is to really understand the due diligence and get visibility on these consumer segments, is to understand when we say these things, how does it fall on people? What is it that they are walking away with understanding? And is that true to what our brand position is, right? And so I just think that at the end of the day, there is a lot of information around the topical piece, right? In terms of white teeth, fresh breath, and cavities. No one would disagree that those things are important. But the brands that win are the ones that understand why those things are important and can go deeper into what consumers actually desire.
Yep.
And it differs by consumer group, right? And so if I were to develop a ad for white teeth, fresh breath, and prevention of cavities, for some, in some, it would just be an ad to talk about a fresh mouth. But for others, it might be putting on a fresh smile, right? Because that reinforces an image and something about me that I project to the rest of the world.
Yep.
So it's really just understanding, again, spending time and your brand plans and your investment should help you uncover what that consumer truth is, such that you can play that out in your advertising.